First of all, as everybody's coming in, I want to share with you some free resources we have for you. Our name is Grow Global. Is this your first time being on here? Probably wondering, what's this Grow Global thing? Well, it's a big, giant group of realtors across the country and even some people from out of the country that jump on here. And it's a mastermind. We get on here and we talk about relevant topics, and we have some great resources for you. One of the ones we have is we have a Facebook page. You can join the Facebook page, or if somebody invited you here on this call today, they can invite you to that, or you can invite other people to that. We also have an Instagram page. All these links, by the way, are going to be in the chat box, so you'll be able to get those and sign up. Do the things, do the subscribes, the likes, the shares, all that stuff. It helps us out. And then we have a web page, and this web page has all kinds of resources. The main one being is you're going to want to take a look at what are our topics. What topics do we have? On this mastermind, what we do is we pick a relevant topic and we bring on an expert to talk each week. If you're an expert at something, we'd love to have you speak about something relevant. Or if you'd like to be on one of our panels or something like that, make sure you let us know. We'd love to have you on there, because the idea behind this is lots of realtors from all different walks of life, all different experience levels, all chipping in to help each other. Because here's what we believe. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far and you want to last a long time, you go as a group. And that's what we have. So this will be the web page for that. It's called Why Grow Global. Again, the link will be in the chat box. And then, of course, sometimes we know Mondays at noon Eastern Standard Time may not be a great time for realtors, or 9 o'clock if you're on the West Coast, right? So we record them all. And so you're going to want to subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you get notified when we put up a new posting on here. But we've got over 60 videos. We've been doing this for a year. We've got a great library of stuff going on for you, so you can check that out. But with today, what I want to talk to you about is we've got our resident expert on here who's going to be talking to you about the NAR settlement. Now, I got to tell you, a lot of people know a lot about this settlement, but very few of them have read every single document, all the legal findings, and has her pulse on this as much as Stephanie Gilezan. As you'll see right here today, she's going to be talking about all the different changes that are coming, but we don't want you to get caught off guard. We want you to be ready to go, and so you feel comfortable using it and knowing that, look, if you've been out in real estate long enough, I know Stephanie started her real estate business back in the 1900s. If you've been around long enough, you know that there's going to be changes in the industry, and changes are happening in every industry at lightning speed. And they also happen here. And so here's the great part. If you're a veteran of these changes, you're probably just like, okay, it's another change. If you're somebody who's newer to real estate, like sometime in the last 10 years, then you're probably panicking maybe a little bit. You might be a little bit nervous, and we want you to know it's going to be okay. But Stephanie's going to talk to you about there's some things you have to know to be able to keep your license safe and also protect the consumer. And that's what we're going to do from here. So I'm going to have Stephanie Gilezan unmute and take us through. By the way, if you get questions, raise your little hand in the hand raise thing, or go ahead and put the question in the chat box, and one of us will read it off for you, and we'll go from there. But Stephanie, man, calm everybody down. Tell them what's going on. We've seen changes like this in the industry so many times, but go ahead and lay it on people. What's going down?
Well, and again, like what Jim said, put questions in the chat, put comments, raise your hand. We want this to be interactive. We want you to walk away from this today with one thing in mind. You no longer have fear with what you're reading. You no longer have fear about how you're going to have conversations with your buyers going forward. You no longer have fear to state what your value is and what your charge is going to be. I have been a proponent for this change, and I know a lot of people are like, are you nuts? And I'm like, no, because I have always recognized my value. I have never understood in my 26 years of business why a listing brokerage determines what my worth is, right? Why is that? And so years and years and years ago, I leaned more to the commercial side of real estate. And what drew me to that was the fact that I set my value, right? When a buyer wanted to consult with me and have me help them, work with them, represent them, the first words out of my mouth were, well, this is my fee. And the ones that said, okay, and they signed it, we move forward. And the ones that said, oh, well, I'm not agreeing to that, I didn't work with them, right? I was able to determine my business model so many years ago. And I think it's genius. I think it's brilliant. And I think it's time that you too have that opportunity on the residential side for you to set your value, for you to be able to determine when you run, when you walk, when you seek out what client is really going to be your business partner, right? We have been professionals. Jim, we've always had licenses, right? That determines a professional. We have a
Yep.
special license in order to do business. Our industry went even a lot deeper than some of the other industries, and they said, okay, it's going to be state specific, right? So we have continuing education every year we must sit through. But why haven't we been able to charge like a professional? Does that make too much? I mean, literally, think about that, okay? And so I've got some slides today, and we're going to do some deep dives into stuff. First, I want to say something. You know, there's been so much prep that's gone into this by several companies, and then there hasn't been any prep whatsoever. And so one of the things that I have been doing is paying attention to some of these social media groups where a lot of us congregate. I haven't done any posts, but I've been reading people's posts, and it has alerted me to the fact of why we're here today having this conversation. Because in my mind, from what I'm reading, there's probably more than 90% of realtors a little bit scared today, or maybe the change has already happened in your market and you're still living in fear. We want to get you over every inch of that, because trust me, you all, when you get to determine your business model, when you get to determine your fee, there's freedom. There's a lot of freedom involved in that, and you will be much more profitable. And you won't waste time with people that don't respect and appreciate what it is you bring to the table. All right, let me get up my screen share. We're going to get some slides going here
I
for
love
you.
what you're saying, Stephanie, while you're getting that pulled up, because how many times have an agent on here? In fact, raise your hand if you're an agent who's ever had to work for free. You went out and showed people houses and you spent weekends with them, then they walk in and they buy a FISBO or they buy a new bill without you. I'm sure it's never happened to anybody on here, right? Raise your hand if it's happened to you. Toy Trong says yes. Tracy says yes. Kim Campbell, Suzanne says it. It's happened to everybody on here. It's all happened. And guess what? Those days are over. You are now
Exactly.
going to get compensated when you work. I love it. All right, hit it, Stephanie.
That is exactly right. So why do I love this change? I mean, guys, let's go back to the part of what Jim just said. How many of you all have worked for free? How many of you have taken a massive risk because you're just hoping that you're going to find them that perfect property, and you are hoping that that seller is going to pay compensation? You're just hoping. How many of you have done that? Because that's the old model. Today, going forward, it's not the model any longer. I now get to sit down with a client, and I've always done this, but now everybody gets to sit down with the client, and you get a guarantee of payment. You are going to set forth what your percentage is, however you want to charge, and you're going to put it forth, and they are going to sign on the dotted line. How many times have we gone through real estate and we've told our sellers, if I can just get them in writing, they're going to make that emotional connection, which will then lead to a commitment? How many of us say that, right? Well, guess what? Day one, you're going to have your buyers make an emotional commitment because they have signed knowing they need to compensate you, right? I am not going to ever spend hours searching for people when I have no idea if it's going to amount to anything. And you all, there's been many of occasions where anytime that I'm going to, and I don't care if it's on the buy side, the residential side, whatever the case is, maybe they're whatever it is, I say, okay, well, here's what my fee is. Because look, in commercial, we've never had cooperating commission shown to us. I know some markets, tertiary markets, maybe in the MLS, but the level of business I've been doing, we didn't have a commission to look at. It was up to us. It was up to us to collect that from our buy side. Sure, we could write it into the offer and make it a negotiating term. But again, the full-blown commitment had to come in writing from that buyer. I never wasted a minute of time unless that was signed. And I look back through my career, and that's exactly why I'm profitable, because I spent less time wasting in hopes of dreaming for that commitment. You also get to identify upfront how serious somebody is, right? I mean, how many calls this weekend alone? I had over 8 calls on Saturday of somebody going, do you happen to have, and what they were asking for, I had absolutely, I didn't have anything of it, right? I had nothing that represented that. And they said, well, could you help me find? Well, here's the deal. I'm going to need your email. My services cost money. Oh, because they're not legitimate people, right? We get reached out to all the time with people that are either just wasting time, they're the tire kickers, they're whatever. This weeds those types of people out too, right? Because come on, our phone numbers are on everything. It's all over the internet. We're all over the signage. We all the time, get reached out to with people that are not really serious about buying real estate. The other thing is a listing broker today no longer determines what I'm worth. All right. We're going to get into some slides because I talked to you all about when I started this about looking at some of the social media groups that I follow. I don't comment and I don't post, but I read these and I go, man, you all Grow Global, we got to talk through this because I'm worried. I'm worried that 90% or more of this industry is getting it all wrong. So let's get it right. Let's take our group of agents and let's give you guys the bigger backbones. Let's get you guys profitable and let's get you over what everybody's thinking that this is a horrible thing, and it's not. This was posted on August 9th. When was that? Friday? This was Friday. I just had a closing today and the seller's agent received 3.5% plus 395, while I, as the agent, received 2.5% minus 395. I mean, so the buyer's agent received 2.5%. She, he, whoever this is, they posted anonymous. They are upset. They're curious. I'm curious how many agents take more on the listing side. My response to this would have been, why is it the listing broker's responsibility to get you paid? If you are worth 3.5%, why didn't you have a buyer contract that stated that's what you were going to get paid? Since when do we determine or allow someone else to determine what our income is, right? I know it's easier. It's a lot easier for you to work with buyers and be able to say to them, well, this doesn't cost you anything. But that's not true either, you all. It should cost them something. Real estate is the largest transaction that majority of all people invest in, right? We've heard that forever, which is why they should be represented by a realtor, a professional. But so why are you so scared to charge them? Look at this one. The MLS I belong to decided to take out BAC already, and the listing agent is not responding to my text message. I'm just sharing with all of you who understand. I love this first comment back because it was actually what was going through my mind. Oh, okay. What does your agreement with your buyer say? Show the house, present the options to the buyer, and write the offer. Why is the listing agent the keeper of your paycheck and what you make? Again, get your contracts, get with the buyer, decide what your fee's going to be. You can absolutely put it in the offer. You all, in the commercial side of things, if I picked up the phone and called every commercial listing broker and said, what's cooperating compensation, they would hang up on me. You just don't do it. We just know in that space that we don't do that. So that's the space you're in now in residential. It's up to you to get that signed by the buyer. Your buyer can dictate to you, well, I want you to take that fee that you want me to pay and I want you to put it in my offer. And I want to see if the seller will pay the concession. It's real simple. Jim, if anybody's commenting, let me know because I'm screen sharing, so I'm not looking at the screen, okay?
Will do.
So, here's something that goes back and forth. This is a seller putting out some information. Seller, I understand sellers no longer have to decide up front on whether they want to pay or offer a commission to another agent. Well, we still want you to make the decision before you have any offers, right? Why would I commit to an amount to pay the agent who is negotiating against me? I don't even know how much the buyer is going to offer. Well, our industry calls it transparent. In my mind, absolutely, as a seller, will I say, sure, I will consider paying concessions, 100%. But again, this comes back to a lot of times, it goes back to the seller's net, right? It goes back to what can they really afford to sell this house for? Even more reason why it's a business decision, you guys, even more reason to treat it as a business transaction and get everybody under that same understanding that they're responsible for fees. Because we will run into circumstances where the seller's not going to have enough to clear at closing. And I know you all are sitting here saying, but I have buyers that cannot afford to pay additional money in commission. But can they? I mean, think about it. When we enter the court of law, all right, here's a great example. And this is a true statement. One of my clients who I have represented for goodness, 14, 15 years, I've sold over 400 properties for this client. She's an attorney. And when all this was going down and NAR announced their settlement, of course, she's paying attention to it and she's reading it. And she said, so Stephanie, the next time you do a transaction for me, you know, how's this going to work? Am I only going to list with you for 3% and not worry about the buy side? I said, well, you know, Judith, I said, it works. It pretty much works the same way that your profession works, right? You go to court, you represent plaintiffs or you represent a defendant. Your plaintiff is paying you and the defendant's attorney is paying that attorney, right? Now, there are circumstances all the time when during settlement processes where the defendant or the plaintiff might say, we'll settle, but you're paying my attorney's fees. I said, so Judith, the real answer to your question is our profession just became like yours. We have the option. We can pay our own realtor fees or we can ask for it in the settlement process, right? Same exact analogy. Same with doctors, same with all these other professionals that exist out there. Now, I haven't said this before, and for those that don't know it, I'm licensed with EXP. EXP has done an amazing job at handling this from day one. That's why the DOJ loves the forms. That's why the state of California has adopted. That's why Zillow has adopted our forms. There's so many different associations across the US that have adopted it. And everybody has said, but EXP is no longer paying cooperating compensation. And that's just a falsehood, you all. No company's ever paid it like that. The seller has paid it or the buyer has paid it. But we absolutely have the rights to, in the offer process, ask for concessions and the seller pay a buyer's agent. Not an issue there. Absolutely no issue there. So buyer can pay buyer's agent, seller can pay buyer's agent, seller concessions to the buyer, and then buyer pays agent. It's pretty simplistic. Does anybody get confused on that at all? All right, I'm going to stop this share and then I'm going to bounce around to something else real quick, Jim.
Some people said great analogy and a great example, they said. So it is true, a lot like the legal firm. The interesting thing would be is if we started charging upfront retainers. Like law firms, right? I mean, you go to talk to it. If you get a top-end attorney, they want a big chunk of their money up front sitting in their account, like up front.
You absolutely can. And you know, that there is nothing wrong with that. You know, my husband and I negotiated and worked on a deal where this was a pretty substantial deal. And we asked for a $50,000 upfront retainer. You know why? Because we looked at the time that we were going to put into that deal. And it was a 2 to 3 year potentially before you got to the pot of gold at the end, if you ever did. And that document said 50,000 retainer up front. It will be credited off the commission at the time of closing. But it also stated if closing never takes place, it's non-refundable. Guys, we are worth our time. We are absolutely worth our time. You know, CPAs, everybody charges for their time. A lot of agents got into this industry and decided for whatever reason to tell buyers that your services were free,
Christy
right?
Goodwin says her last 2 buyer agreements had a retainer. Christy, how much were you charging on that retainer? I'd love to hear that.
One multifamily. I mean, it seems kind of minor, but it was important to me. So it was $800 for the multifamily, and it was $300 for a single family. So
Great.
we're still
Love
working.
it.
Yeah, but I mean, I just wanted to see if there was an appetite for it, and they paid it. So
See,
For the
and
record, if the DOJ is watching or the FBI is listening in, this is not collusion on this. This is just
Nope.
agents sharing different ideas. It's
Yep.
totally negotiable, as it always has been. There's never been a set fee.
that's right.
Just in case they're listening, because my house is bugged, I think, with the FBI. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Jim. But no, I love that, Christy, because again, it goes back to that emotional connection, right? When people put up a little bit of something, whether it's a signature on a piece of paper that is a contract, right? It's a legally binding and enforceable contract. And you're also saying, 300, look, people walk away from money, but at least there's a different level of commitment attached to that. Okay. Now, there's all kinds. Oh, did somebody have a question?
Yeah, I did, Steph. It's Suzanne.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? In listening to this, and I like the idea of the retainer because it makes the person more committed to stick with you and not go out and try and find other buyers. So my question is, once they find these agreements, is it like an exclusive right to sell where they stick with one agent who's going to take them out to find their home, the buyer's agent, or do they still have the opportunity to do go out with multiple different agents if they choose?
Well, that depends on the agreement. That depends on the agreement. And we're going to dive into some of these agreements, you all, because I think that, that's important. And one, here's my favorite part about it, because I think for majority of what I've been reading online, and probably a lot of you have heard these same type of concerns, is I'm still seeing agents post and say, well, how do I explain this to a buyer? Well, here's a great thing that NAR did for everybody that is a realtor, is that you can send this to every single buyer that you want. It basically takes them through the reason of why they have to sign an agreement. It's not an option, you all. The law is we have to have a buyer agreement signed. Now, there's going to be 2 types of that, okay? A one-time, one property agreement. Well, again, we're going to get into those. But this is where this explains that. In case they've been, they've missed the news and haven't heard anything. This is branded to the National Association of Realtors. It goes through of what the settlement means and why they now have to sign a written agreement with an agent before touring a home. If they want to get in a home, they've got to sign an agreement. If they're not willing to sign an agreement, guess what they're doing? They are not touring homes, or they are stuck only going to open houses. That's it. They can only go to open houses.
Hey, Stephanie, before you go any further, Nick had a question. I think it's a good one. First of all, when we do these masterminds, there's people from all over the country that are in here, all 50 different states and sometimes different countries. So here's our disclaimer. Always check with things that you're being told here with your state broker as well as your local board. Because as we know, real estate's hyper local. There's national laws, there's state laws, and then there's even local laws that your particular MLS may be doing specific local finding and things like that. So Nick, check that out with your broker as far as how a retainer would work, how it would look, and how it would work in your specific area. Go ahead, Stephanie. I wanted to make sure we got to that right out of the gate.
Thank you for that, Jim. And that's the thing. Again, talk with your broker, number one. Absolutely. Now, here, again, here's the other thing that you all have to remember. This is for in-person. This agreement has to be signed for in-person showings, except open house, but also live virtual home tours. Okay, so if a buyer reaches out to you and says, well, I just want you to go and record it for me and go that route, doing it, through the iPhone or doing it through, WhatsApp or whatever. They still have to sign that. And guys, here's the thing. You want them to. You want them to. You want their commitment. This is the part. I mean, Jim, feel free, or anybody on this call. Isn't this this is where I get so confused as to why we want to work for free so often. And we're trying to figure out ways to do business without having this agreement signed.
I think you're right, Stephanie. I think the change is never liked in any industry, right? Every time change happens, I remember the old days when we were first going to start using buyer's agents, and the entire world thought it was coming to an end. Listing agents said, real estate's over as we know it. When the crash came and Frank Dodd came out, everybody said, real estate's over as we know it. And the answer is yes, as we know it is over, but the changes are going to be a benefit and help for those who adapt.
That's right.
Those who don't adapt, they're just going to be flushed out of the business. And we don't want that to happen to any of you. We just want to help you fit this into your process. It's just going to be another step in the process that you're going to go through. And I think the bigger of a deal we make about it out there in the public, the worse it's going to be for all of us. For example, we should not be having open discussions about this on our Facebook pages in front of our clients. Because here's the deal. Most clients have no idea what has happened. I think the percentage is less than 13% of the public has even heard about this. Like, people just don't know what they don't know. They're already wrapped up too much in their business. So the bigger the deal you make about this, the bigger the deal they're going to make it. Think how many people you have that sign a mortgage without ever reading it. Like, this mortgage is in the state of Ohio, it's 24 pages. And most clients just come in and pencil whip it and just sign it and go, because they know I'm not getting the house if I don't sign it. And if we come forward to that, I think with what Stephanie's going to explain as such a matter of a fact, this is it. If you want to see the house, you got to sign this. I don't make the laws. Here it is.
That's
if
exactly
we just approach it like that, people are just going to, nobody reads shit nowadays. So they're just going to pencil whip it and go. Of course, being the professionals, we are going to explain it, but we're not going to over explain it. Just bullet point it and move on.
That's exactly right. And, every time, because again, before this ever even took place, and agents that were coming onto my team, and maybe they came from somewhere that they were not used to having compensation agreements signed to, to even work with buyers. Like, I had one a few months back. She came from a great brand, a national brand of real estate company. And she was like, I've never been told to do this. And I said, well, on my team, you will do this. And she was so scared to just send it out the first time. And guess what? She sent it out and the guy signed it and she got it back in just a matter of seconds. If that's the precedent you set forth and you just tell them, in order for me to work with you on trying to find this property, you must sign here. They did it.
I think in the past, Stephanie, too, a lot of agents kind of used a misnomer of like, hey, it doesn't cost you anything to use a realtor. I caught myself saying it before too. It doesn't cost you anything to use me as your buyer's agent, when in reality, they were actually paying for it. And so now we got to kind of backtrack that a little bit and just be able to explain the fact that this is just the way business has always been done. This is just another sheet of paperwork that you're going to fill out. And we don't need to hide the fact that we get paid.
That's right.
Everybody gets paid. Your mechanic gets paid. And I heard people say, look, as a person, could you change your own transmission if your transmission broke? And the answer is yes. You could go on YouTube, go buy all the tools, read a bunch of manuals, and try to muddle your way through changing your own transmission. Would it save you a bunch of money? Yes. But just what if you don't do it exactly right? Just what if? Could you get it right? Yeah. Maybe. But what if you screw up this complicated task that's like a once-in-a-lifetime task of changing your transmission? The downside is way smaller than the upside is way better. I said that wrong, but you get what I'm saying. It could cost you way more in the long run than the little bit of money that you're going to save. And that's how they're going to use us as agents, because they can lose a fortune if they screw it up.
But Jim, I love you bringing that up because it's so true. I get so much pushback when I'm working with agents on why we're going to do this. I hear constantly, well, I work in the $200,000 price point and they don't have any money. Okay, so what do they do when their transmission breaks? What do they do if they get a DUI and have to go to court? What do they do? I mean, think about it, you all. What do they do? Why is it your profession that they get to cop out of, right? They shouldn't. It's called budgeting. It's what it costs for professional fees, and that's going to be the decision going forward. So you all, again, I'm with
Fortunately, with
EXP.
us, they can finance it. They can
Yeah,
finance it right into the price of the house. Spread it out over 30 years.
exactly.
It's not going to make more than a few dollars a month difference in their payment.
That's exactly right. And it's a lot harder to finance a DUI than it is buying a house with a realtor, right? It's true. I'm just trying to put ideas in your head of why this is so simple, you all. Now, again, EXP, I'm going back to this because we have done a phenomenal job. Our leadership, I mean, it is awesome. I don't care what company you're from. You need to look at this buyer kit and the seller kit, which I'm going to show you. But here's what I'm going to pull up first because, you know, we didn't copyright any of our forms because we are a brokerage that is for this industry, for the entire health and wealth of this industry. And so, you know, if you're not ready to lock a buyer in for the long haul with you, and they just want to see a house, a property, this is the single property buyer broker representation agreement. It's the law. They have to sign it before you can open that door and walk them through. Okay. This is for those sign calls. This is for those internet leads you're receiving. This is for those when they're just interested in that. You get them to sign this, you meet them at the property, then you conduct your interview as to if you want to get them into a longer agreement or more of an exclusive agreement with you. Because here's the thing, you guys, I hope you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing us. I certainly do. And there's a lot of business that I did not give up. I chose to get it out of my life because I could be more profitable working with other people. And that had nothing to do with price range. That had nothing to do with what they were willing to do. It just had to do with everything of my mental capacity. So not everybody is suited for one another. But this is a great agreement that you can utilize. I don't care what brokerage you're with, okay? This has been approved across all states except Colorado. It has not been approved in Colorado yet. They're a little bit slower behind the times. You can still use it. It's just a disclaimer that the Colorado Real Estate Commission has not put it on here. But here it is. You know, this is giving you a time frame for the length of the agreement. It's for one property, so you're going to put that address in. You're putting in what your broker fee is. You're putting in how it's going to be paid. You can add additional terms. So if you're asking for that retainer, that's where you're going to put in those additional terms and when they're due and so forth. But this form is so simplistic. I just think it makes everything just super, super easy. I know a lot of the boards have worked on their own forms. This is the form that EXP is using going forward, and many have adopted it for the very reason of its simplicity. And the Department of Justice absolutely loves it. So did the Consumer Protection Act agency across the entire United States, for the reason that it's just so transparent. So it's a great one if you haven't had a chance to look at that. Now, if you're looking for the one that's going to lock them in a little bit more, we've got the form for that too. And that's where this is going to go into, you know, you working with them going forward for whatever period of time, regardless of the property. It's got everything set forth here on exactly how everything is going to work. Okay. It even talks about direct seller to broker compensation. Okay, so it gives them that option here so that they understand and know that they might say, okay, Lily, on this house, we want you to, you know, offer this, and this is where we want to ask the seller to pay for your compensation, right? So it's still an option. but it also states that they're willing to pay you in the event the seller's not, okay? So all of these are just huge, huge assets. The other thing I love about this, and you guys, this is not a protected site. I don't care if you're with Remax, Coldwell Banker, Mom and Pop Realty, whatever the case might be. I would get on here and play around. I'd also watch all the videos that Leo Pereira and Holly, our VP of Brokerage Ops, has done. The Leo Pereira and Tom Ferry podcast is tremendous because not only are these forums located here, but there's also a ton of scripts that you can listen to, you can read, you can, just utilize them in your business going forward. Now, on the seller side, same exact thing exists. The same forms that we're going to need going forward. EXP has taken the stance that the only listing agreement we're going to use going forward is EXP's listing agreement, which again is stellar. Oh shoot, something happened. Reload. All right, there we go. But all of these things are here for all of us to utilize and go through. The scripts are here, on what you need to object to. And I think my screen share is having an issue here. But the scripts and the talking points on how do concessions affect my bottom line? Do concessions affect a sales price? What if a buyer requests concessions? All of these things are here. But most importantly, what does all of this always end up around for a seller? Jim, come on.
How much am I going to be end up with? What
How
do I have
much
left over?
That is exactly right. And so right here, they have made it simple to download the seller net sheet, because when push comes to shove, you guys, it's all about the bottom line. Maybe the reason why I'm always good at having these conversations is because in 95% of my world, I'm always talking about the bottom line, commercials about the investment, the ROI, right? This is the conversation that the sellers care about. Don't you think that a seller would be more willing if you take them through the seller net sheet process and you plug in there what you think that they should keep in there for buyer concessions, which can include them as the seller paying the buyer broker. If you get to the bottom line that they're interested in, don't you think they're going to just say, okay, right? That's how we have to start having conversations in real estate, you guys. You put too much force and too much effort and too much attention on everything that nobody wants to hear. But a seller wants to talk about their bottom line. And if you can figure that out. Now, when you're working with a buyer, you've got the download on the seller with multiple offers. You've got right here the multiple offers review net sheet as well that you can plug in and show them exactly what they're going to end up with. You all, this is what real estate has always been about. And I think for the last, I don't know, Jim or anybody on the call, I don't know when it changed, but I think it just became a, realtors make a ton of money and the seller just pays them. And, we're just out opening doors and talking about paint and carpet and really not doing what we should be doing, which is managing a business transaction. Am I right on that a little bit?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It got so easy for so long. The skill-based part of it, you kind of forget, right? You don't use it for so long, gets a little rusty. And now it's time to bring back the skills.
That's right. And it can be done very, very simple. And, when you look at these sheets, these are Excel sheets. They actually go, if you're a Google user, you can actually put them into your Google Drive. You can share them with your sellers so that they can play around on them. But I mean, this is what real estate is about. This is why we got a license. This is why we go to continuing ed every single year. This is why we get paid. And this is why we determine our value. It's based on how much value are we really bringing to a transaction. I've always said it. I do a lot of business because I'm a closer. And the reason I'm a closer is because I know every step of the way to really be able to advise my client. And it's because I do the research and I do the work. There's a handful of states where sellers' net sheets have always been required, but there's not very many. And I think this is the big thing here that you all need to get freshened up on. And it's something that you can bring to the table that a lot of realtors aren't going to think about. But I think it should be mandatory across the US. I think that this is what we get paid to do. And this is why we should have to go through this process. All right.
I think it's important, Stephanie, while we're talking too, is that everybody who's on here needs to be a beacon of light in their own community, but also remind people that we need to be very careful that we stay on the white side of gray. I'm the type of guy that likes to live in the gray areas of stuff, but not on this. I can tell you, I think the DOJ and the attorneys that cashed in on this class action lawsuit are going to be looking to make an example out of somebody. They're going to be looking for a brokerage or a big team or somebody to really bring the hammer down on. So if you're in those groups that are trying to circumvent the way of doing it, I know a lot of it's jokes and things like the memes and stuff like that. Like I'm mowing in my yard, I'm mowing in the 3% commission sign in my yard for the drone photos that are taken and stuff like that. I think we all need to be very careful to stay away from that as much as possible. Like these secret Facebook groups where we're going to be posting the co-oping commission and things in there. We should probably stay away from it for now, because I think they're going to be looking to drill somebody because they see hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars signs on the table. What do you think about that, Steph?
No, you're 100%. You are absolutely 100% right. And, again, you think back throughout the course of, I don't know how many years. This is my 26th year in the business, you guys. And ever so often, here's what I didn't like. I didn't like that, and this was going on a lot in the last decade, where people would make phone calls and they weren't real buyers. Okay. They were making phone calls and doing reports to Fair Housing, right? And saying that they were being discriminated against because maybe, there was a whole huge lawsuit in New York over this because, high-end luxury agents were being targeted. And people were calling them saying, I'm looking for a rental and I have a voucher. And they're like, I sell real estate, I don't do rentals. Well, they got sued because of that. So, in this instance, it's a scenario of, when a buyer calls me, number one thing, it's not about what they're looking for. It's about what my fee is, number one, for me, okay? Because I need to get that conversation out of the way first. And then two, then we dive in deep to what it is that they're looking for. And you all have to be selective on going forward, what makes business sense for you. And this gives you that ability to do so. Whereas before, I think, we threw a lot of things at a wall to see what would stick and what actually we would make as far as what would sell, what would close, all of those things.
And there will be some shoppers, some buyer shoppers that are just shopping for the lowest fee they can find. And that's fine. That's been going on the listing side forever, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
been people like we heard when, $500 flat fee MLS listings came out, everybody panicked. The sky was falling. Real estate's over. We'll never, get paid again and things like that. And the answer is, you're right. There were some people that took that option, but the majority of them, 82% of them, no, they went with a full service, full boat listing. They wanted everything done for them, just as always. But yeah, there were some bargain shoppers. The same thing's going to happen, I think, on the buy side. Are there going to be some people? Yeah, you just don't have to work with them if you don't want to. You can go and choose to work with other people that are willing to pay your fee. And I think that's going to be it's going to be great for everyone.
That is right. I know somebody put in the chat that I did put the links to both of those sites that I just showed you guys there. And then I put the NAR one in there for earlier when I was showing that. But, Kelly put a comment, there are hefty fines for people who try to skirt the rules. Hey, you all, I have seen fines for $5,000 if you show a buyer without getting a form signed? I mean, some of these boards are not messing around. I mean, $5,000. Guys, don't be that person. It's not worth it. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. And, you know, we will get secret shopped. We will. We're always tested, especially, you know, when the attorneys are out there wanting to make another big settlement on us, right?
Steph, can
Yeah.
you and I talked a little bit about the E&O insurance and how you think that is going to play into this long term, not only with independent brokerages and franchise brokerages and all that, but also how it relates to agents. Can you want to touch on that a little bit?
You know, and so this is a good, you know, for people that that know any broker owners. I've had a lot of these conversations, and because of this large settlement that has, you know, transpired and stuff, you know, insurers have gotten really crisp with their language going forward. Okay. So now as a broker owner, you know, some states have options at the commission level that agents can buy the E&O insurance at the time of license renewal. And it's, you know, it's got all kinds of stipulations with it. But as an owner of a firm, I don't care if it's an independent, I don't care if it's a franchise owner, you should have a master E&O insurance because you've got all these agents on your license, right? And so in having conversations with broker owners, not only has their E&O gone up drastically, but the language, there is so many things E&O won't cover now because of this lawsuit, right? They want to get away from ever having to pay, you know, any of these large settlements. And so what's happening is that agents and independent broker owners or even franchise broker owners are becoming susceptible to the fact that coverage is going to be limited. It's going to cost an arm and a leg, but will they really insure you? Will they really fight for you? Will they really pay the expenses of a lawsuit and so forth going forward? And so that's another thing. The one big thing that they've definitely said in the language is they're not going to be paying any of these fines, right? So if you make a boo-boo or you just make a business decision and decide to start showing property to somebody without this signed and you get caught, you're going to owe per occurrence is what most of these have stated. It's per occurrence, right? So, you know, in my MLS, it's $2,500 for the first time. And then it escalates. So if you show a buyer 3 properties, that's 3 occurrences, you're 10 grand that single day and you're out. You're going to pay the money though, Kelly. 3 strikes, you're out, but then you still got to pay the money, right? So, I mean, think about it. We're sitting there thinking about, okay, well, my buyers can't afford to pay. Well, you can't afford to pay, right? Makes sense. You can advertise, you cannot advertise on the MLS or anything that has an IDX feed. Anything that has an IDX feed. So if your website, the listings are there because of an IDX feed, you cannot advertise there. That's why on showing time, you can't advertise because it's all IDX fed. You know, you can send out mailers, you can send out blast emails, but you know, here's the thing, you all, I'm always of that understanding that, you know, I'm going to encourage my sellers to offer contribution, right? But it's also going to go back to that offer and what makes business sense too. So, you know, it's up to you how you want to put that out to the public. But anything that you put on your website, you just can't do it if it's an IDX fed. So if you create a website of your own listings that you've manually put up there that have not come out of the MLS, then you can advertise compensation.
So I have a question. Doesn't the seller have the right to change their mind? So I don't see the benefit in locking them in or saying, or
That's
making
right.
a statement that they're going to give a certain amount.
It's determined on the offer. Yeah. You're exactly right, Kelly. You know, here's the thing, you know, in the commercial side of things, okay? Obviously that conversation is had at the time of listing, right? I mean, I secure, you know, what my fee is. And that conversation is had that this can come up. And they're like, okay, and it's at that time of the offer, right? You get an offer in, and in there, the buyer's broker has put seller to pay, you know, whatever percentage, 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever it is. They put that in there. And obviously on the commercial side, my seller has looked at the net. Okay, what is this offer going to net me if I pay that and all the other things that are in that offer? So it is, I think you leave it up to the seller and you see what comes in and what transpires. Can we say on the MLS, we love buyer's agents? Why? Isn't that a given? We just love our industry, right? All right, anybody else?
So I have that. You hear me now?
No, there you are.
Bottom line, we cannot insinuate anything. That's the point that we are making here. We cannot insinuate. If we love by, if they insinuate, we insinuate the seller gonna do something, then we might be fine.
You want to
Well,
stay
we
on
wanna
the white side of gray on everything. If it seems like it's gray area for right now, everybody CYA, cover your butts and just stay away from anything that could even be perceived as the C word, which was collusion, right? Which they, of course, they tried to say that we did, which we never did. But Toy, you had a question out of Chandler, Arizona.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Jim. So I understand the single sheet, but what if I want to show them like 8 houses within 8 days or something? I know it has the day ending expired, but it has only one address.
No, that's for the single sheet. So that's only for one. If you're going to show them multiple properties, you're going to go with that second form, which is for that purpose.
Pull that form back up, Stephanie, if you've got it there. Pull it back up.
Let me go back to the kit here, and then I'll pull it up. Okay.
Because that is a big deal. There's a lot of times you're going to show more than one house once you've done that. That one pager was nice and simple. They made it just so that you met somebody as an internet lead real fast. You haven't had a ton of time to build a rapport. And the last thing they are is they're going to lock themselves in with you for 3 to 6 months. You're going to get that single sheet one. But go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah,
show that one there.
So this is for multiple properties, okay? Buyer broker representation agreement. And so this is for as many properties as you want during this time frame, okay? So every agreement's going to have a length of time on it. And so, you know, it's as many as possible.
It's that geographical area that you don't want to be too restrictive. Don't put yourself just in one suburb. You know what I mean? It'd be good. Like for you, I would put Chandler, Arizona. Right? Or Central Arizona, wherever you guys call yourselves. Here in Ohio, we're going to put Central Ohio, covers 6 contiguous counties.
Yeah, or leave it blank, you know, if you're multi-state licensed, you never know, right? So, but yes, you'll use this if it's for multiple properties. So that buyer that is picking you, that they're relocating into town and you're going to take them on a tour, that's this. If somebody calls you off of one property, that's going to be the single, I'm sorry, this one right here, single property buyer broker representation agreement. Okay.
And then your job on that one house that you're showing, the one property you got them to sign, the one document, is to build enough rapport while you're with them and do enough value that you can lock them into a buyer's agreement with you that, if I'm going to commit to you, Mr. Buyer, this is going to be a win-win win-win for both of us. And this will just be committing you to me. This just shows that we can work together and we don't have to fill out any more paperwork until it's time to sign an offer. This just knocks it out. And then I'm going to go after it. We're going to get this thing done.
That's
right.
Just
get them to sign it.
Angela's got a question, Jim.
Go ahead, Angela, unmute and hit it.
Hi, guys. Yes. Thank you for all this. My question is, and it's really kind of to go over, when you are the listing agent, but the buyers reach out directly to you, So you will be representing both sides of the transaction. I know some agents don't like to do it. I have done it many times without any problems, but now with this new change, I just want to see how do you do it?
So if you've got the listing and a buyer reaches out to you and schedules a showing, you're going to do that single property buyer broker representation agreement for that property. They've got to sign that. On that form, you can determine, how that compensation is going to work. Here's what I love about the EXP listing form is there's already a space for that provided for all of us. It says, how are we going to approach it? If we end up working with a buy side too, on that's unrepresented. And so, but you will need that buyer to sign that single property form before showing it.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, it was for that form, but I guess we will do the same. And if the buyer cannot, let's say, we will tell them, but then we will still write in the offer. The seller, almost like in a third person, like the seller will be is willing to pay compensation for the buyer's side of the representation or whatever for this amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that yes, that'll be reflected in your agreement with your seller.
Okay, thank you so much.
In some cases, you might just end up representing the seller and not representing the buyer whatsoever. The buyer might be going in unrepresented. That's going to happen a few times here and there, which I think Stephanie's attorney analogy is a great one to people. Like, look, you could go to court yourself and represent yourself if you want, but the other side's got an attorney. Who do you think is probably going to come out with a more favorable outcome? Are you sure you don't want representation when you're in this? And some people might still say, no, I don't want to. I watched a TikTok video and I know how to do this myself, right? And they're going to try to do it themselves. But Suzanne, you've been patiently waiting with your hand up. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm unmuted, correct? Okay.
Yes.
In the multiple buyer agreement, does that act almost like an exclusive listing fee so they can't go to other buyer agents, or do you have to sign an exclusive in addition? So
you would sign an exclusive in addition to that. I mean, in this buyer, and guys, here's the one thing that I want everybody to do, okay? And I'm serious.
Mm-hmm.
That some of you are asking these questions. Now, don't get upset with me, okay? Here's the one thing about Stephanie Gilezan. I'm a truth teller. I want every single one of you to read these agreements 100% of the time, because I have found that so many people jump on these webinars and want to be told, and then they don't even understand what they're putting in front of a buyer. Please read it verbatim, okay? But that is what this is for, is to resolve what your fee is going to be, how it's going to be paid, who has the right to pay it, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that you see in here that you will not see in here is
Mm-hmm.
that it's exclusive, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not exclusive. So you could potentially have a buyer that signs this with multiple people.
Okay.
And you know what? That's okay too.
Right.
Now, in let's see, I just had it pulled up. Let me find it again. Okay, in the exclusive listing agreement, okay, exclusive authorization and right to sell,
Mm-hmm.
what Angela was talking about, in this agreement, it has unrepresented buyer. Okay, this is what your seller signs with you. If buyer is not represented by a broker, buyer's broker, then broker assumes additional liability and paperwork responsibilities. In this scenario, broker will not represent the situation, will not represent the buyer, but will facilitate the completion of necessary forms and ensure fair treatment of all parties. In this situation, the listing broker compensation shall be exactly or blank % of gross purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So Angela, you would already do this. If you're using this listing agreement, you will have already covered that. But what you've said here is that you're exclusively representing the seller. You're not representing the buyer. Okay. Just wanted to share that real quick.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So these are great questions as we're getting ready to wrap up here. It's our 1 o'clock. Look, we do these Monday masterminds at noon Eastern Standard Time, 9 Pacific, and we'd love to have you on here as a resident expert about something that's going on that you know about, or if you have a topic that you just want us to cover and you want to see us put together a panel with it, we'd love to do that. If you'd like to be on one of our panels, we got all kinds of experience on here. People with, 10, 15, 20, 30 years experience. We've got newcomers on here that are a year in the business that are doing 40 and 50 closings. You'll hear from those people too, because you're like, okay, not just the grizzled old veterans on there. Let's hear from some of the new people. We've got new people that are just knocking the cover off the ball that we can be on there. If that's you, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what are you doing that's working, right? So we have these topics coming up. Next topic we're doing next Monday is, do we have that already set up? Let's take a look here. Let's see, next Monday. Oh, let me hit the refresh. Usually we have it up. This is going to be on nope, not yet. So do we know, John? We know what our topic is next week? I know on the 26th, we're doing realtor budgeting, how to build wealth in real estate, not just make money, get rid of the roller coaster up and down, and how to actually set yourself up for financial success. What do we have on the 19th, John?
Julie's not here. She's the one that has that.
We're doing shorts by 3 experts, we're gonna have.
That's
yeah,
right. Thank you,
short
Kim. Yeah, we're
videos. Julie,
TikTok and Reels and stuff like
we're
that.
doing.
Oh
reels.
yeah, we're
We
doing
have
social media.
social
week.
media, why and how we use the shorts to market to seller buyers and get more buyers to on seller, to really come to see the home and stuff like that. So we have 3 experts. We have Summer Hudson, we have Haley Booth, and we have we have Kelly. Sorry, Keith
Beautiful.
Jackson.
Some of those people you mentioned have
Keith.
millions of followers. Some of the people you
Millions.
mentioned have millions of followers, not like
Yes, they
hundreds or
do.
thousands. They have millions. So they're going to show you exactly how they do it, what they post, why they post it, and then more importantly, how you monetize it. Like, it's great to get views, but how do you monetize the views so that it turns into leads? They're going to teach you all that all next Monday, and we got all different platforms coming in. It's going to be a great one. So jump on and bring a friend. If anybody's got to go, they can go. We can probably stick around for a few more minutes and answer questions. But if you got to get out, we understand. Get out there and get after it, guys. This is the NAR settlement with Stephanie Gilezan, and she's been doing this for years, for years, decades in the commercial industry. It's always been this way in the commercial industry. You negotiate your compensation up front, and you got paperwork signed on it ahead of time. So we got a lot of thanks in there, Stephanie. Tons of people thank you. Hank, Brian, Toy.
I got one
Svetlana.
last final story, and it's true. About a week ago, I get a referral from a Compass agent out of Santa Cruz, California, for some commercial land in another state, Pennsylvania, which we have a license to do. And she says, look, I searched, and you're coming up #1 in land transactions in the US. And I said, fabulous. So she gets me on a call with her clients. They're interviewing multiple people. It's on a Zoom listing presentation, which is how I do 95% of my listings is on Zoom. And I'm going through specifics about this land. I'm not giving them any value because I had a lot of questions in regards to certain conditions on the land and what we may or may not be up against. And that's all I spoke to. It wasn't about me, it was about the land. And we ended that and them really not having any of those answers. But we ended that with, they said, and your fee is, and I said 10%. My fee is 10%. And so 2 days later, she said, can you get on another Zoom call with us? I said, sure. So that evening I get on a Zoom call with them, and the seller says to me, he said, Stephanie, it's obvious you have the most experience to sell our land, but the problem is you're double the price. And I said, in order to get experience that's going to get you to the closing table with the highest price possible, it costs 10% for me. I run a profitable business. For me to take your listing for any less than 10% would be a distraction. You guys, I got the listing and I was double the price. But there was no hesitation. There was no quiver. It was direct. And I answered direct, and I won. And that's what you do when you believe passionately that you are valuable. And so today it is about you guys understanding that. I prove it every single day. And I see a comment. I need more help with commission objections. All right, well, that's another class we need to write down, Kim Campbell.
And there's also
Thanks,
the
everybody.
FAQ in the EXP buyer toolkit. There's also an FAQ on commission related objections, the same
Awesome.
6 that are out there. You want to read through that too, but we should definitely do that as a training and a role playing for sure.
100%. All right, everyone.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
everybody. Awesome. A round of applause, please, everybody, for
Thank
Stephanie
you.
on mute. Tell her thank you. Well done, Stephanie. As always, great job.
Thank
Great job.
you.
Tons of people out there applauding Stephanie. You're good to go.
Thank you.
So next
Thanks,
week,
Stephanie.
noon Eastern Standard Time, get here. We're going to be doing social media. These ladies, millions of followers. They're going to show you how to monetize it,
And
how
men,
to
and
make
men.
more money, and men and guys on there too. And but they're going to open up their playbook and show you everything they're doing, so that you can have more leads. And when you have more leads,
Yep.
you have more choices. And then commission objections don't become as big a deal because you've got so many clients. If one person doesn't want to pay it, you got 5 others that are willing to. There you go.